the member of the 2005 Texas National Championship team. He was in on that tackle of Lendell White on 4th down, getting that ball back to Vince Young to go win a national championship. And unbelievable NFL career, the Minnesota Vikings, the one and only Brian Robison. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Man,
Great,
we're fired up. We're fired up to talk to you because you you played the game, you lived it. We want to get your take on that Georgia defensive front and just how dominant they are. They get upfield, they penetrate, they kind of smash the run on the way to the quarterback. What's your take on what it's going to take if Texas meets up with them again to solve that defensive front?
Well, I think the problem is the scheme versus scheme, right? I think the issue you got is Texas has had a lot of success, especially the 2 games prior to that, of kind of that side-to-side motion zone scheme type running plays, right? So you get the D lineman running sideways, and then you can kind of break a hole. You saw it against A&M. It worked over and over again because those guys were running sideways. Georgia's not going to do that. Georgia's going to get north and south. They're going to penetrate. They may even let the first guy go, and they may backdoor the next guy. So if they're going to be one of those you're going to have to just line up. If you're going to try to run against them, you're going to have to line up, and you're just going to say, hey, it's man versus man. Like, we're going to run north and south. We know you guys are going north and south, and we're just going to find out who's the more physical bunch. Because if you try to go with that zone scheme against those guys, they're going to penetrate. They're going to get in the backfield. They're going to make the running backs cut to the back door or something like that, and it's never going to hit the hole the way you want it. So when you run against Georgia, man, you look at Alabama when they've had success in the past, and it's just one of those deals where they say, hey, we're going to line up, and we're just going to be more physical than you. And so it's one of those deals they're just going to have to learn to do that, or, they're going to have to abandon the running game.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian, seemed like Georgia, Kirby Smart, they just have Steve Sarkisian's number both times. The defensive line just manhandled Texas. 13 tackles total in between both of those games. Do you see anything different that maybe Quinn Ewers could do next time around if they face Georgia, or just in general moving forward in the college football playoff? What are you noticing with QB1 for Texas?
Yeah, I thought Quinn had a pretty good game the other night, man. I really did. I thought for the most part, I thought he played extremely well. I thought he played well enough to win the ball game. The one thing I would say is I'm a cause and effect kind of guy, right? Everybody looks at the effect. Let's take, for example, the field goals. You got 2 missed field goals, and that's the effect. That's what everybody looks at, and that's what they're going to say, well, we missed 2 field goals, that's why we lost that game. Well, that's not true. What was the cause of that? Well, you made a field goal, but you had an offsides penalty, which dropped you back, and then you missed the field goal. You had opportunities to put the ball in the end zone offense first 3 drives of the game, and you didn't do it. Why? Well, you got in the high red zone, and you got penalties that backs you up, 1st and 20 now, and now you're having to make play calls in order to get 20 yards back versus just having a 10-yard where you can kind of chip away at it, put yourself in 3rd and short situation, or even be able to get it in the end zone. You get behind the sticks, it's hard to do that. So going back to the original question, I thought Quinn did a good job for the most part. Obviously there was the interception that you never want to have, but, it's just one of those deals, man. I think the offense and Quinn just have to be more consistent. That's what I'm looking for. Can they be consistent? And that's the biggest thing I've seen is they've just had a lot of inconsistency. A&M game, same thing. That game should have been a 31-0 game, if I'm being honest with you. And it just wasn't. They couldn't seem to put them away. They couldn't seem to finish drives. And if you're going to go through this playoff and you're going to win a national championship, you've got to be able to finish drives with touchdowns, not field goals.
So, B-Rob, would counter and power be more effective running the football against that defense? ISO?
I don't know about counters. Because then you're pulling a guy and everything else like that. But, man, if if it was me, I'd say, hey, we're gonna line up. We're gonna motion our tight ends like we do, but we're gonna utilize them as lead blockers. You know, if we're gonna run downhill at you. We're gonna run off tackle. We're gonna run right in the B gap. You know, just straight up and see how that works. And if that doesn't work, then you got to start, you know, maybe adding some tosses in there. Maybe usually the other thing I thought Texas always has done a really, really good job with is utilizing their backs in the passing game, which opens up the run game. And I feel like lately that's kind of got lost. I feel like they didn't really do it in Georgia, and it's hard to do it against Georgia because those guys can run, right? So you're in a situation where, like, if you can't get that going, you are one-dimensional now. And that's what they want. They want Texas to be one-dimensional. They want any team they play to be one-dimensional. They want you to have to throw the ball because now those guys up front can pin their ear back and just take off, get in their jet stance and take off after the quarterback. So I think in order to be successful against Georgia, you're going to have the guys, and I think Texas has the guys up front that can be physical, that can get after somebody. And it may not work 5, 6, 7 times, but eventually if you can wear those guys down and you can keep being physical with those guys and wear them down, something's got to give. Something's going to pop. And if you can't, well, then you need to use the extension of the pass game. And what I mean by that is a lot of player screens. You know, get the wide receiver screens really implemented, going with that. The slants, the mid-range crossing routes, things that Texas has been extremely good with for the most part. You just didn't see a lot of that the other night, in my opinion. And I think a lot of it was because of penalties, getting behind the sticks, and just trying to get too much back.
Yeah. Brian,
what do you like most about this Texas defense?
Man, there's a lot of things I like about this Texas defense. I mean, I think I'll start up front. I think they've got some guys up front that are, I mean, they're men. There's no other way to explain it. You got Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton that everybody thought losing Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy was going to be the end of the world for Texas defense. And those two guys have stepped up in a really, really big time way because that was the focal point of the defense this year. Could they stand up in the middle on the front line? And I think those guys have answered that question over and over and over again. The edge rushers, I mean, really talented bunch of edge rushers that can get after guys, that can get after quarterback. You're looking at Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, which a lot of people griped about early in the year, has really come on strong as of late. Ethan Burke showing up in a multitude of different ways, whether it's run game or pass game. You've got a group of guys that can get it done. Linebackers, listen, linebackers are side to sideline, up and down, they can play all over the field. The thing about Georgia, which I think hurt the defense a little bit in the second half, was sideline to sideline linebackers are a good thing unless you've got running backs that are running north and south while they're running sideline to sideline. And they isolated those guys on the running backs to where it was one-on-one situations with them. And quite frankly, they made them miss tackles. And that was a big key in the second half for them. The DB group, that's the group I've probably been most impressed with this year, especially after last year. The way those guys are playing together on the back end, the way they've been aggressive, not only in the pass game, but the run game. I think they have kind of found their niche. I think they have found their camaraderie, the way they play together, the way they communicate. I think that has been a huge undertaking in the offseason, and I think it's proven itself this season.
Brian, how difficult is it to game plan all week for a quarterback like Carson Beck? We saw what happened at the end of the first half where he gets knocked out of the game. Here comes Gunnar Stockton, who you have no idea what kind of film he has because he hasn't played all year long. And he comes with a little bit more of a dual threat dynamic. That first drive in the second half was really telling for how the rest of the game went. How difficult is it as a defender to completely change your mindset and get set in on a new guy that you've never seen before come into the game?
Zay, it's funny you asked me that question because when Carson Beck got hurt and on the TV when they said, like, he's coming in, I texted a buddy of mine. I said, this scares me. And from the simple fact of what you just said, there's not a lot of study that goes into backup quarterback. And I'll tell you, it's twofold, right? it's not just about the quarterback. It's not just Stockton and him coming in, what he can do with his legs, what he can do with his arm, how he's comfortable in the pocket. You don't know a lot of that stuff, right? But the other part of it is it can completely change the game scheme that Georgia has. They know what Stockton has, so they're going to scheme around him on what gives them the best success with Stockton at quarterback. So it can totally change the dynamic of a football game. And as you saw the other night, it did. Like, you just don't have a lot of film on those guys. And then when you change the scheme up a little bit and you've prepared for a week, I mean, you might as well throw everything out the window and just go play ball. And I think that was an issue you saw the other night, is when you don't have that and somebody else comes in, like, it's one of those deals where it's a gamble and you just got to go play football and hopefully things come out on your side.
Okay, so have you ever given Sark a hard time about that Lendell White 4th down play?
I have not. I figure it might still be too soon. I don't know.
Okay, so take us through it, B-Rob, because you're right in the middle of it. I mean, take us through them deciding to go for it on 4th down. I'm sure you remember every bit of that pre-snap, during the snap.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday, man. I mean, honestly, it was it was a run play that they had called throughout the game, and they really kind of hit us in that B gap, and it was actually a great scheme play that they had on us. And I know there's a lot of flack, with the USC coaches on why they didn't have Reggie Bush in there. But if you really remember, Reggie Bush, outside of 1 or 2 plays, really didn't do much to us in that game. Because a lot of it was we were very keyed in on what they did with him, how they utilized him and stuff like that. So from my memory, I think there was 2 plays that he really hurt us. But outside of that, in the run game, it really wasn't anything that he was doing. Lendell was really the guy that was hurting us because he was able to get north and south. They were running that little counter play, that little power play where they were getting into the B gap. They were basically creating a gap where they blocked the ends with a double, pulled around, was able to get the defensive tackle down and opened the gap and basically isolated the linebackers. And so 4th and 2, you knew what play they were going to run. And I actually had my mind made up. Like, I was like, dude, like, I know it's not what I'm supposed to do, but I'm jetting into the B gap. Like, I don't even care. Like, and, I mean, it's 4th and 2. Like, what's the worst that can happen, right? So, basically knew they were going to run that play. I just tried to jet in there, get as low as I could and just kind of create penetration, kind of like what we were talking about with Georgia's defensive line. Was able to get through there, get down low, and was on the ground. I'll never forget it. Like, I didn't know whose leg I grabbed, but I grabbed somebody's leg. And I wasn't sure if it was the puller. I wasn't sure if it was the offensive tackle. I had no idea. And I just remember grabbing a leg and everybody just falling down on top of me. And I remember when we started umpiling, like, I looked and it was Lendell White's leg. And I was like, okay, I grabbed the right leg at least, and luckily we had some backup where some guys could get in there and take him down. But man, it was an awesome feeling because the first thing you do obviously is when they start umpiling, you see where he's at and you look to the sideline to see where the marker's at, and knew pretty much immediately that we had stopped him. So it was pretty awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah. Brian, Mack Brown let go, North Carolina. I don't know if Mack's going to ever coach again. It's hard to see that, but your thoughts on your former coach and just how that situation with North Carolina went down?
I mean, I think obviously it's very sad to hear that Matt getting fired, over there in North Carolina. But I think a lot of people really respect him in the college football world. I think a lot of people respect him here at Texas. And a lot of people respect him at UNC for what he has done at North Carolina. And he'll be one of those coaches, especially over there, that kind of goes down in lore over there. I mean, he's one of the, if not the best coach in North Carolina history when it comes to their football program. So, obviously you hate to see that. You'd love to see Matt keep coaching and keep going on, but I think it was very respectable on both sides from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, that it was it was kind of a decision made amongst both sides. Obviously, I don't know, maybe there's some news that came out today that I don't know about, but just everything that I've been seeing, it just seems to be, just kind of a mutual respect between the two of them and understanding that, it was a business decision that North Carolina felt like they needed to make.
B-Rob, if Texas is going to win a national championship, what needs to happen?
Man, honestly, I think the offense needs to be more consistent. We've seen flashes all year long of what they can do when they're hitting on all cylinders. And at this point in the season, you've got to be hitting on all cylinders. And especially with a string of playoff games you got coming on, you got to be consistent. You got to be who you are, and you got to go out there and just put it on tape. Defense, just keep doing what they're doing. But the other thing that I would say is penalties. Got to clean up the penalties, man. I mean, that has been honestly, like, especially the other night, that was a big breaker for the Texas offense. It stalled out a lot of drives. It took points off of the board. It caused a lot of issues. And if you take away those penalties, man, I think you got a totally different ball game after the first half, because instead of that ball game being a 6-3 ball game at halftime, it may be a 21-0 and 21-3 ball game. So it changes the whole dynamic of the football game. So I think offense needs to be more consistent, and I think defense keep doing what they're doing and then clean up the penalties, and they'll be where they need to be.
Yeah. Your thoughts on the Clemson Tigers? It's interesting because Dabo said in one of his last pressers that when he first got the Clemson job, he actually came to the ATX and spent a little time with Mack Brown for a few days. And now he's a two-time champ and got his team to win the ACC. What do you like about this matchup for Texas, and what scares you about this matchup for Texas?
Well, I think the first thing you think about is just from the seedings. Texas can't overlook this Clemson football team. Listen, they've been there. They know how to win. They know how to get championships, whether that's conference, whether that's national championships. Dabo knows how to get his team ready for any type of football game. So that's number one. They cannot overlook them and look towards the next round. The second thing is their offense. Their offense can put up points. They can put yards onto the field. So the defense is really going to have a good challenge ahead of them this week or next week as well. So they've got to be ready for that. Offensively, I think this is an opportunity for you to go out there and really, really put on film just what we were saying about being consistent, extending drives, scoring touchdowns at the end of drives. I think the offense has to really be able to shine in this game. And then the last thing, man, is just don't let them hang around. Texas should be able to handle Clemson, okay? But we all know on any given Saturday that any team can beat you. And Texas has to go out there with a killer mentality that, hey, we are not here to win, we are here to dominate. And if Texas does that, they should handle their business. But the thing that scares me about Clemson, once again, I'll go back to it. Their offense and Dabo Swinney will have this team ready to play, and they cannot overlook them.
When you look at, the interior defensive linemen have been so good this year, and you got 4 of them who are moving on, and then you got the guys behind them who it sounds like there's some guys who are thinking about going into the portal. Tia Savea, Jere Bledsoe, Sadir Mitchell. Like those are your not Savea, but Jere Bledsoe and Sadir Mitchell were your developmental guys. B-Rob, if those guys move on and Broughton has another year he can use because he was a redshirt in the COVID year, but Collins, Jermaine Lole, Bill Norton are moving on. How big of a concern is that for you? Because it's hard to play on in the interior defensive line as a freshman, right? Yeah,
absolutely. It's a different ball game, but you got to look at the recruiting. Number one, I think Sarkis does a great job of having a great balance of developmental players, and that meaning guys that have come out of high school, and then also going after guys in the transfer portal. And there, you look at it. There's a lot of teams in this country that don't have a balance of that. They are either putting all their eggs in one basket, which is the transfer portal, or they're putting all their eggs in one basket, which is high school. And Sark has done an extremely well job, and a lot of the winning programs right now have done an extremely well job of making sure they have a happy balance of both of those. And if there's one thing that we've seen, the transfer portal changes everything in college football. So with that being said, with so many guys moving on, I think what you're going to see is probably Sark is going to spend more time in the transfer portal trying to get guys to replace them going into next year, just like he has done with the wide receiver group after last year. You look at that and all the time he spent getting those guys to come over from other schools, whether it was Golden or Bolden or Isaiah Bond, completing that wide receiver group after how much he lost, but also guys like Wingo and DeAndre Moore that have been kind of developmental guys. So I think that's a prime example of what Sark is going to look for going into the offseason. If he knows those guys are going to be gone, he's going to spend time in the transfer portal trying to get guys to replace them and really create that depth that we always talk about with this Texas football team.
Yeah. Which player on this Texas defense has impressed you the most, or players?
Man, I think on the defense, man, like Anthony Hill. Anthony Hill is a man amongst boys, right? I think he's the guy that really makes this defense tick. But I tell you, there's two other names out there that I got to throw out there. And I know I'm going to throw three guys out there, but Colin Simmons coming in as a freshman, being able to do the things that he's done, did not think that was going to happen. But I knew from day one when we saw him and his ability to get off the ball, really kind of anticipate the snap, which most freshmen do not have that knack this early. He's been a guy that's been very impressive to watch. And Makuba has been a guy that, honestly, I think really was a solidifying factor this year. You had Jahdae Barron, you had Taft, you had a lot of those guys that were kind of solidified guys. And having him in there, I think, was a big addition. And the way he's played well together with those guys. But he's been very good in supporting the run game, very good in the pass game, which not a lot of times you get DBs that have both those talents, but he's another guy that I've been very impressed with this year.
All right. So your Minnesota Vikings, man, they have been so impressive. Did you see this coming, especially with the turnover at quarterback? And what's impressed you most about the Vikings?
Well, listen, I played there for 11 years. Of course I saw it coming. No, I did not see it coming. No, I've been very impressed with them guys. I think everybody in the world thought the same thing that I probably did, and I can eat crow. I can admit it. Having Sam Darnold, having a rookie quarterback, I said, ooh, there's going to be some growing pains here. But hats off to Kevin O'Connell and the coaching staff, man. Bringing Darnold around, he's the best that he's ever looked. Heck, he's doing stuff that quarterbacks haven't done in 20 years there. I just think that the coaching staff really has this offense clicking. And you look at the defense and a lot of the stuff they've done with Brian Flores now at the helm and everything like that. They're very aggressive. They get after people. They cause turnovers, which is huge. So they're really playing a great game of complementary football when you watch their games. They win the field position battles. They're winning turnovers and things like that. And that's why they're sitting at 11-2 right now with an opportunity to not only win the division, but possibly, be one of the top seeds in the playoffs.
Is there a hole that you see that they're overcoming? What's the flaw?
Well, I mean, the flaw is they lost 2 games. No, the flaw, man. I mean, I think the thing that's going to be an issue is how healthy they can stay. Right? They've got some positions where they've had injuries, and it's caused a lack of depth. You look at the offensive tackle position. They have Brian O'Neill there, but they lost Christian Darrisaw. So you're talking about one injury away that could change the whole dynamic of that offense. You'd like to see, honestly, I mean, I say you'd like to see the running game get a little better, but I mean, heck, it's been really good. It works for what they try to do, and I think the biggest test for them is going to be Detroit. I don't know if you watched the first game, but it was a heck of a ball game, man. I really thought Minnesota was going to run away with it there for a little while, which was really impressive, and then Detroit fought their way back. So I think the biggest thing is when you look at that game is can you continue to be physical with the physical football teams like Detroit and stuff like that? And if they can, and they can stay healthy, they can battle anybody in the league.